All right, welcome Razballers to another edition of the Razball Fantasy Basketball Podcast. We're here to do our preseason primer. We have our King of Kings, fearless leader, supreme leader, Sun is with us.
Thank you very much for that intro. Please don't confuse me with the great leader in the north over there.
It's not Kim Jong-sun. And then we also, from across the pond, the chalk and cheese himself, Craig.
Chalk and cheese. Yeah, good to be here, guys.
And as always, I'm your host, Brent, and I'll be chiming in here and there. But these guys are the experts, so listen to what they have to say. Now we're going to kick off with the preseason primer. Sun, anybody you think looks like, I know we got to preface it with preseason, you got to be careful because, there's guys not playing, they're testing guys out. But is there anyone you've seen so far that you wasn't on your fantasy radar in 12 team, or lower leagues, but now is somebody you're thinking, could actually make an impact right away?
I mean, most of the guys were on my radar. I guess the one guy that I was, it was more about minutes allocation, I guess. But the one guy, Seti Osman, he looked really good. And I think we talked about it 2 or 3 pods ago. I just had a really hard time projecting, allocating the minutes for that team. But
you'll also find him number 2 on my top 5 fantasy sleepers video that's active now. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, all good. So there's been talk that he could play the 2. He may play the 2 and the 3, and I saw some of his highlights. And he's like grabbing the board, taking it down coast to coast. Like we knew that he could. He had the ability to take the ball to the rack, and that he can shoot. But he looks very comfortable, and if he gets the minutes, he's gonna be, I obviously would have underrated him. So that's probably the guy in terms of off the radar for me that probably stood out the most.
Craig, how about you? Any names that jumped out to you so far this preseason that could be on the fantasy radar right away?
Yeah, again, I mean, no one who was really off the radar, but there's definitely been some real excellent performances out there. I think, the 12-second shot clock in Charlotte looks real, so I think you've really got to seriously consider bumping up, anyone who was fantasy relevant in Charlotte up a little bit. But the real performance that stood out to me was Josh Jackson last night for Phoenix. I mean, he was on the draft radar anyway, but seeing how much he had come along as a ball handler, the chemistry he'd already had with DeAndre Ayton in the pick and roll, looked really aggressive on both ends of the floor. Was really impressed with what I saw. I know you got to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. There was no Trevor Ariza in the game. Obviously, Devin Booker's hurt. Interestingly, TJ Warren came off the bench. But yeah, Josh Jackson last night really looked the real deal and starting to look like the player like he was the back end of last season that warranted the number 3 overall pick that Phoenix invested in him.
Yeah. Sorry, can I jump in here?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Trey Lyles. I saw him when he played against the Lakers the other day. They're playing right now, actually, so it's just reminding me I'm watching the game right now. His shooting percentage wasn't that great, but I mean, the first preseason game he jacked up 7 3-pointers. He had some dimes, he had a steal, and word is that Malone might play him at both forward spots. So, right now Denver's a little banged up, right? Harris is banged up, Barton. So, there's a chance. I mean, if he backs up Millsap, and Millsap isn't the greatest bastion of health, and if Barton plays more too, that could open up more minutes for Lyles. So, that pace that the Denver's going to play is going to be great. They're going to play really fast. So, he looked pretty good, and he was way off the radar for me coming into the season. So. That's one guy I forgot.
I was going to throw out, and this guy was number 5 on my top 5 fantasy sleepers, and I know Craig didn't want any spoilers, but Free Willy Hernan Gomez didn't start tonight. They started Cody Zeller, but he went for 16 points, 10 boards, 4 blocks in just 16 minutes. He's done nothing but put up huge stats this preseason. It remains to be seen, if as a defensive liability, if Zeller's gonna get more minutes than we think, or if they're gonna, put a lineup with Miles Bridges at center or something like that, or crazy like that. But Hernan Gomez, to me, I would add this guy. I'm already adding him in most leagues where I have a guy I want to drop. But if you're still yet to draft, this guy has to get drafted in drafts right now. I think his per 36, he only needs 20 minutes to be a huge fantasy contributor. So I know Son's a big Willie fan. What have you thought of his preseason? Am I overreacting?
No, I think Craig alluded to it. The 12 seconds or less, with the Borrego captain in the ship now. I mean, they're going to play at a super, super fast pace. So if he's going to go all in on offense, Willie's going to, he would seem like Willie would be the best fit. My only concern is that, they still like Zeller. And he's not a bad player. He's a very good passer for a big man. I've seen him, have the ability to make the mid-range, the little elbow J. He hustles and, he plays D. Like Hernan Gomez, as well versed as he is on the offensive side of the ball, like he's, I think he's been watching too much of, his Matador Spanish brethren.
He was 1 for 1 from 3-point range in the game.
Right, but it's all about the defense for him. And when I watched him, the 2 preseason games so far, well, they played 3, right? I didn't catch the latest one, but the first 2, his defense is still terrible. Like he's really, really bad. So, that's the only concern. But the pace is going to be great, and if they're going to go all offense, like you said, per 36, he's a monster. So,
chalk and cheese for Zeller, isn't it?
Yeah,
they both offer different things. Do you feel with Willie that it's? I agree. Per 36 monster. I like Willie Hernan Gomez, always have, but he's almost a little bit like Enes Kanter light for me.
For sure.
Willie gets the blocks though.
He doesn't though. I think you're reading too much into the 4 blocks that he's got tonight and thinking that he's not a good enough defender. He's not athletic enough to really play. And if you look at what the style of play that he plays, it's very Enes Kanter like, minus Enes Kanter's a much better free throw shooter. I think if you're expecting anything more than sort of 0.8 blocks per game from Willie Hernan Gomez, I think you're probably being a little bit unrealistic. But I do think there's value there because I think, his per minute contributions on boards and points are legit. And if Charlotte are going to be playing, they're going to be playing a lot of guys serious minutes, I think, or fantasy consideration minutes, because there aren't many that are going to be playing 32, 33 on that team because of the pace of play. But I still think, as a late round guy, I agree. I still think you've just got to be aware of the fact that the defensive stats for me won't be there. And if they are playing up tempo, is he going to be getting to the line more, which it then becomes much more of a serious problem.
Yeah, he's been like 50% career or something like that. And now another guy, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on him because he's going to be on the waiver wire in every league, but his stats have really jumped out at me this preseason. And I know Son's a fan. I think Son actually owns them in one of our leagues, but I'll start with Craig. Craig, what do you think of Pascal Siakam on Toronto? He's very athletic. What is he?
I like Siakam. I always have. More so as a real life basketball player than fantasy. He's an excellent defender. He's a double machine in college. His ability to play multiple positions, he's not a natural 3. He's but he could eat into centre minutes, and that's part of the reason why I fear a little bit for Jonas Valanciunas' long-term sort of fantasy value, is because I can see certain rotational sets where Pascal Siakam moves to the 5 or Ibaka plays the 5 to stretch the floor and Siakam comes in the 4. Fantastic defender, that's going to give him minutes. I think this season might be a season too soon in terms of a standard league fantasy contributor, but it's a guy that I like, and he's definitely worth, I think, some kind of speculative ad in dynasty leagues, because I still think there's more to come from a statistical output there, especially if Toronto go the route of rebuilding next season.
Son, another guy who used to be a pretty popular fantasy guy and kind of fell off with falling out of favor in Boston, getting traded to Utah. Now he's with the team now. He spent a whole off season with them. Is there a chance Jai Crowder starts putting up some good fantasy numbers again this season? Is he going to be a big enough part of that Utah rotation?
He's going to get minutes. I'm just not the biggest Jai Crowder fan, especially from a fantasy perspective. He'll give you, he'll shoot some threes, score some points, grab a few rebounds. Not going to really give you dimes, a little under a steal a game and no blocks. He's very meh. But to me, he's more of a volume play. Just because, he does end up getting a lot of minutes. I think I actually projected him for 26 minutes this year, which is, I think it's a tick down from last year. So, it wouldn't surprise me if he does see some minutes, because there's been, an influx of talent on that Utah team. So, Seth Locious coming back. You got O'Neal, Grayson Allen
as well is going to have some play
for sure. So that's going to spread out the minutes. So it's going to be interesting. But I wish Viz was here, because I guess the main lineup will be, they'll probably go big, right? Gobert and Favors, and if they want to go a little smaller, they have Gobert at the 5, and I guess Crowder can play both the 3 and the 4. I guess it comes down to what price you have to pay for him. I just don't see the upside in him.
Yeah, especially I think, was it Donovan Mitchell was saying that even Ekpe Udoh was a big standout in camp, so he's going to be another big guy getting minutes. Cephalosha, they got a pretty deep team there. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of something you got to be aware of when you're looking at adding a bench player from a team, is how deep is their bench.
You feel they've done a really good job, though, surely, in terms of, the job Quinn Snyder's done is fantastic.
Absolutely.
But they've brought in the right guys at the right value to really make this, on paper, you look at the names, it doesn't look all that formidable in terms of, playoff potential, etc. But they've done a really good job. They've got, in terms of having the flexibility where they've got size, they've got a lot of guys with size who can also handle the ball as well. You think of Grayson Allen is going to come in as well as another guy that can handle the ball. Royce O'Neal, again, my Baylor bias, but he's another emerging guy, who I don't think is necessarily fantasy significant, but from a real life perspective, certainly adds a lot to them. Ingles is a good ball handler for a man his size as well. You've really got to admire the job they do. And like Son said, I think 26 minutes is a fair projection, because naturally, defense is a big priority in Utah, and Jai Crowder adds a lot of that. But, a guy like Grayson Allen coming in, he might not directly affect him in terms of the same position, but Grayson Allen comes in and plays some 2. It's going to move. It's going to move the rotation about a bit, where people play different positions. And I think that from an offensive standpoint, there isn't much there to Crowder's game. And like Son said, it is just a volume play at the back end of a draft or for deep leagues, because there just really isn't limited upside there given the roster construction.
Now, speaking of really deep leagues, I happen to be in a 20-team league, and a guy I added at the end and Craig, I want to start with you on him, is DeAndre Bembry from Atlanta, who kind of had a breakout preseason game. So obviously, take it with a grain of salt. But he did flash a lot of potential. He's just had a lot of injuries. Is he somebody, especially if Atlanta moves Kent Bazemore, somebody, as a sixth man, potentially getting in the starting lineup if he were to stay healthy? Does he have the skills to contribute in fantasy?
I think sixth man might be a bit of a stretch. In terms of talent, I mean, DeAndre Bembry was a guy coming out the draft that, was a real value pick for the Hawks. I liked what they got for where they got him. The injuries obviously have seriously derailed some of the progress. There is talent there. I just think from a fantasy and opportunity standpoint, it's not really going to come out. I don't mind it as a speculative ad. There's probably other guys that I prefer to Bembry himself. But, he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything quite well without really standing out in any one particular area from a skill set point of view. So, I don't hate the pick at all in terms of a 20-team league. And definitely, Atlanta's going to be the land of opportunity. It's not a case, I think, where a lot of guys are going to be seeing 32, 33 minutes. I think we're going to see a lot of everybody doing a bit. So, yeah, I don't hate it at all. There's certainly talent there in the players' skills that he has. But it's, another one of these guys that does a little bit of everything quite well without really standing out in any sort of one category for me.
Son, one guy who kind of had a really breakout game and is going to get a lot of playing time due to an injury. So Bog got injured. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Yogi Ferrell got a lot of run and scored 26 points. Is Yogi Ferrell someone to maybe look at adding if you put Bog on an IR spot?
I mean, I think the main beneficiary of the Bog injury is Buddy Hield. I think his value skyrockets now if he gets a lot of those minutes. I know a lot of people preferred Hield over Bog, in the offseason. I actually was very high on Bog, so I'm kind of disappointed.
Is he somebody worth holding on to, on an IR spot? Because I know they said they're going to try to bring him back slowly.
No, for sure. Because the diagnosis was like 4 to 6 weeks, right?
Yeah. But then the coach had come out and said, we're going to bring him along really slow. There's some disheartening news like that, but coach speaks, so who knows?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like he's gonna miss more than half the season or anything like that. Like he maybe miss a few weeks to a month, maybe. I'm thinking. Yeah. But he'll be out there. I would hold him, but I'm obviously biased. I love his game. And I think he has a lot of opportunity there. So I think the main beneficiary is Hield. Yogi Ferrell, I mean, I guess in the deepest of leagues, but not in anything, a standard league. I think Fox is going to suck up most of the point guard minutes there. And, I don't know. I guess he could play both the 1 and the 2 if they decide to go that direction. But, there's a lot of options that, the Kings can go with, right? They can go Justin Jackson.
Frank Mason there, too.
Yeah, Mason, right? Mason, plays well. Justin Jackson, they want to play Bagley at the 3. So I just don't see Ferrell getting enough minutes to make a significant contribution.
Craig, is there anyone so far this preseason that you were thinking highly of, but now maybe has you a little bit concerned? Or, are we still too early?
It's too early for me. I think the biggest concern for me, a guy I'm super, super high on, is Jonathan Isaac.
And he's already got a hurt ankle, the same ankle, right?
The ankle hurt last night. After being on 9 minutes on the court, I think. I liked what I saw from him in the 9 minutes that he was on the court to start the game versus Philly. He was the length was a real problem. I mean, the 2 points he got came from, a shot that he blocked and then a fast break dunk. But in the first few minutes as well, he could have easily had 2 balls where he kind of stripped the ball with the length being a problem, it didn't quite materialise because Philly's still got the ball. So that's definitely a bit of a red flag in terms of my own drafts and my own sort of pre-season hopes. But I think that he was banged up last year. I mean, Son and I were talking about this, I think either yesterday or earlier, I can't remember. We've still got to temper expectations that this is a 7-foot guy that's got a very, very light frame. There's definitely muscle that needs to be added on there. I just think the potential is too high to ignore, especially in long-term leagues. But the defensive numbers, given if he is healthy, really are going to be outstanding, I think. So the biggest takeaway, I think, for me is probably, just keeping an eye on the Jonathan Isaac injury. Is it something serious? Is it something that's going to continually linger as well? Ankles are, a real bugger to sort of heal from. They take ages.
He has a history too. It's sort of Steph Curry with those ankles.
Exactly. So I'm still being aggressive. I'm not, tempering expectations down too much because, this is still a guy that, given just 20 minutes a game, is going to, defensively really help your team. But it is a light frame, very, very tall guy. I mean, the pictures that came out and all the talk of him growing, it's definitely real. You saw him stand side by side with Aaron Gordon, who's 6'9", and he was towering over him. He's standing next to Bamba. He wasn't that much shorter. So the fact that you've got a 7-foot guy that's got the ability to put the ball on the floor, shoot the 3-ball, and playing minutes at the small forward position is definitely going to be a mismatch problem if the offense can develop. But yeah, I'd say that's the only real sort of takeaway. The other one possibly is TJ Warren. I wouldn't say I was necessarily that high on him going into the season, but I know he is going at the in the final few rounds of drafts. He came off the bench last night in Phoenix's game, which isn't. I don't worry too much about whether a guy is starting or whether he's not. But they went with Josh Jackson ahead of him, and you got to remember this was without Trevor Ariza and Devin Booker, so probably trade bait for Phoenix at this point. But TJ Warren's kind of a guy for me where if he is traded, it's really got to be to the right team, because for him to have significant value, he really needs to be one of the more primary options in an offense, and that sort of concerns me if he moves away.
Yeah, Warren doesn't really have those periphery stats, that really boost your fantasy value. What do you think?
Exactly that. So if he goes to a team and he suddenly becomes the fifth option, for example, that would really concern me, because there just isn't there isn't a floor there for fantasy elsewhere outside of the scoring, really. So and stills. So they're probably my two biggest concerns, I'd say, at this point. There isn't that much to report on such a few games. A lot of the rookies have looked outstanding. Most people are kind of doing what we expected in terms of the top end. So
yeah, is there anyone really quick who you were high on and you're now feeling even better about them now after a little preseason?
Yeah, Miles Bridges. I had him ranked 7th in my rookie rankings before the draft. Fell to 9th after the landing spots were revealed. It's no secret I've always been really high on this guy. The Charlotte up-tempo offense that we spoke about, he's really going to benefit from, because it almost kind of forces him to play with the aggression, which, is what he needs to really develop his fantasy game, because that lack of aggression on the offensive end is kind of what I thought was going to limit him. He had that big 26-point game. I haven't watched tonight's game. That'll be going on after this podcast. So the fact that they're playing the up-tempo, he's going to see minutes, because you're going to need a lot of guys to be running up and down. So yeah, very pleased from what I've was bullish on Miles Bridges before, still bullish on him now. Really liked what I saw from Eliakobu last night. He was the first player off the bench. Shaq Harrison drew the start, but Okobo clearly outplayed him. I think that's going to, obviously not an ad just yet, but that's definitely something to watch throughout the season, especially if sort of injuries continue to hinder the Phoenix Suns. This is a very talented offensive player, excellent in the pick and roll, got a good jump shot. A guy that I like a lot. Probably not for 12 teamers, but definitely in your dynasty and deep leagues. That's probably my takeaway so far.
Son, one guy I wanted to run by you before we get into your thoughts there. It jumped out at me tonight, not to be a spoiler alert, but a guy who Memphis invested a lot of money into and they've taken a lot of crap for it, but seems to be healthy. Played 19 minutes in the preseason, 12 points, 2 assists, 5 boards, a couple of threes. You know who I'm talking about, son?
Conley?
Chandler Parsons.
Parsons. Oh, wow.
The big disappointment. And
Okay.
They've taken a lot of crap for him. Seems to be healthy. Played 19 minutes in the preseason and put up good numbers. Is he someone who could jump back on fantasy radars if he's healthy, or is this just one of those preseason gotchas?
I'm leaning towards preseason gotcha. What's the
The Simpsons?
Yeah. I'm not a Parsons guy. But if he does continue to show stuff and take a flyer on him with your last pick, I don't mind, just because the opportunity cost. But I'm more inclined to not believe.
Yeah, if anything, it seems like he's gonna hurt guys like Dylan Brooks and things like that, who might have been some scoring options off the bench if he can. Because it feels like Memphis would want to play Parsons just based off the investment if he's healthy, to see if he can do it still.
It's going to be tough, right? Because, so he would probably play the small forward position, right? But you have Kyle Anderson. So he's not taking minutes away from Kyle Anderson.
Yeah, he started over Anderson in tonight's preseason game.
Yeah, that's preseason, right?
Yeah.
And then I don't think he can play the 4, just physically. But then also, you got Green and JJJ down there. So, Memphis has Kyle Anderson and Omar Caspi. Where are the minutes coming from? And plus, I'm just not a big fan of his game to begin with.
Yeah, I was interested because I know when teams take a lot of crap for guys, they tend to try to force them in there just to feel better about it. So, son, anyone who's sort of got you a little worried after watching this preseason so far?
No one's really worried. I guess maybe the injury related. Like the hearing CJ McCollum had PRP, injections, like that type of stuff kind of worries me. I don't take too much from playing or playing time or rotations, just because they're not really playing hard, and coaches are experimenting with lineups. So I guess I actually did the Charlotte Hornets team preview. So I guess there were two players from there that kind of stood out to me, that gave me a little bit concerned. One was, Craig's boy Malik Monk, just because.
Blasphemy.
Just because Lamb looks really good, right? So Lamb, if he continues to play well like that,
Lamb looks like somebody who should probably be on fantasy rosters.
Yeah, for sure, and he's real cheap right now too. So. He'll be able to.
He might be on your waiver wire right now if you're in certain leagues. Yeah,
possibly. So he and Lamb, in a way they're kind of similar, right? Like they have the potential to triple jump and to mess around on any night. They won't really hurt you in any category. They're both kind of, very tall, long, not like the quickest guys. So their games are very similar. And the emergence of Miles Bridges also, right? Because they love his defensive versatility, and he's been showing off his athleticism, so he can play the 3 and the 2. So he could conceivably take some of Monk's minutes. We'll see.
Miles Bridges play the 2.
He could, right?
I don't. So. I not at all. If anything, I think he's more likely to take minutes away at the center in the power forward position.
Well, he could play the small ball 5, and then he can play the 4. But then they're stacked at the 4, right? You got. Williams, Kaminsky, and MKG will probably slide down to the 4, right? So 3, I mean,
the biggest decision that they have with Miles Bridges is figuring out whether he's, going to be, more of a 3 or a 4. But he doesn't really have that ability, that same level of ability that they need of putting the ball on the floor. I'm not saying he can't defend the 2, but he's certainly going to be a liability playing the 2 on the offense.
Well, if you have Batum at the 3, he can handle the ball a little bit and take some of that pressure off.
There's a lot of options that they can do there. A lot of versatility. Yeah, I mean, he was showing off his 3-point stroke in the preseason, but you may be right. Like in terms of creation ability and facilitating offense, he may be lacking there. But in terms of shooting, I think he can shoot.
And I think the one number that hasn't jumped out for Bridges is his assists.
But he's not a particularly great facilitator, really. I think he'll be an excellent 2-way player in time. It's something in my articles, in the podcasts we've done previously covering rookies, it's something I've always stressed about, is that, I think he will be an excellent 2-way player in time. Just really needed to get that aggression on the offensive end. This was a guy who never really got to the line in college, never really attacked the rim, with putting the basketball on the floor, and I think he can do that, and it's something that I've kind of preached for.
Agreed. Now, but I don't think they would need him to be a facilitator, though.
No, I agree with that as well. But I don't think that he's certainly not a shooting guard for me. And I think that yes, the shot has dropped, and it's nice to see the threes go down, but he is an erratic shooter, and if you were going to pick a real flaw in his game for me at this particular point, other than the lack of aggression and lack of ability to get to the line, it's how erratic that shot is. And it was the same all the way through Michigan State. When it's on, it's great. There'd be games where he'd put up 26 points or 27 points or something in Michigan State, but when that shot left him, he would, I wouldn't say he would go hiding, because physically and defensively he was very, very strong and a huge asset to them, but he would go hiding almost on the offensive end at time, and sometimes go for 6 or 7 points or something. I think that you just got to be a little bit wary that although it's been a nice preseason and so far for him, and I've loved what I've seen, and this is a guy I'm very high on. I've always had him inside my top 10 for the rookies. I'm a big fan, but I think you've just got to be aware that there are still the deficiencies there, even though that the shot's falling at the moment. It will be an up and down process. Will it get better over time? Sure, I've got confidence that it will, but I think that there's still enough of a red flag there that it needs to be taken into consideration. He isn't the kind of shooter that Malik Monk is, not even close. Which you look at Monk's percentages from last year, and you think Malik Monk was a poor shooter, but he really isn't. He's an outstanding shooter with outstanding form. Going back to Monk and just
he was drafted.
This is why Craig loves Monk, because look at that. Like I can feel the passion. I can feel the ferocity, the love. It's like, man, we need to get Monk on the show, because he'd be like, yeah, that's my boy.
He was looking for a shirt. I didn't check it today.
And surprise, Craig, we have Monk here on the line. No. Before we...
Hey, well, hold on. One other thing. There's a little concern, Kemba Walker. Like, a part of me is like, we need to boost him up just because, he's going to be the useless monster on a team that's going to play at a super fast pace.
Awesome.
But here's the thing, right? Like, if they do not win, and he's an unrestricted free agent after this year, right? So there's a chance that they move him. There's a chance that they move a lot of these guys and just kind of tear it down, right? So I think that's a concern. That's something that you have to think about with Kemba as well.
More reason to get Bridges when all that playing time opens up. So one thing I wanted to ask Son about here, before we wrap up our preseason primer, there's a lot of teams are talking about this small ball 5. Washington with Otto Porter, obviously the Warriors with kind of Jordan Bell and Draymond Green sort of started that. One that jumped out to me, and I want to ask you as a Lakers fan, Kyle Kuzma at the 5. They say he's bulked up. Is this a real possibility, and what does this do to his fantasy value?
Well, I'm actually watching the game right now, and Jokic and Plumlee were just abusing him down low. So,
Yeah.
but it's an interesting thing. I guess if they can figure out the defense, communicating, switching, it'd be just like a swarm of bees. I think it's going to be a crazy, deadly lineup. Just because, you got LeBron at the 4. I mean, you could even put LeBron at the 5, but they probably don't want to, subject them to that, that physical punishment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, Kuzma and LeBron are just going to just eat up any team that wants to go big, at least on the defensive side, right? They maybe get to abuse them on the offensive end, but I mean, it's going to be deadly. I don't know. There's a lot of guys like that are really close with the Lakers that don't like the idea of having Kuzma at the 5. And honestly, I don't think we see it too much. I think it's just something that Luke is just trying to see and figure it out. But if it does become a viability, because I mean, just watching this game, even without the small ball lineup, like even when McGee, JaVale McGee's out there, they're pushing the pace. Like these guys, like they're grabbing the rebound and they're going. So this team is gonna run and gun, and if they do have that small ball lineup, and it's gonna be pretty crazy on the offensive side of the ball.
And what about?
The thing that stands out though for me with potentially playing Kuzma at the 5, and again, I'm just probably reading way too much into the very first preseason game that they played. But the Lakers didn't really look like they were very interested in rotating on defense at all.
Their communication's been a problem. Yeah, their communication.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like, and you probably just went on to the point, but sorry, I was watching baseball as well at the time. But if you play Kuzma at the 5, you're kind of the communication and the rotating is kind of going to be essential, really, because he's just going to be abused down low. So I don't think you can read too much into that. Obviously all the teams want to space the floor, and it's a trendy thing, and it is effective. It does create space in the paint to drive all your 3-point options. I just don't see Kuzma as that guy.
It's possible. I mean, just because he is he's very agile for a man his size. He's not the biggest, strongest guy. I think the one thing that's been very positive is that he and Rondo have been kind of spending a lot of time watching film, breaking down. I guess there's the stories like they've been texting each other, and Rondo would kind of teach him one thing, and then Kuzma would text him back and be like, "Oh, do you mean like this?" And they go back and forth. So, if he's able to, get that, that awareness, increase his defensive IQ, it's possible because he's quick enough. So, but it all comes down to in that type of lineup, like you said, the communication and the ability to swarm, and just knowing like who's responsible, when the offense passes on the second pass, who's rotating where, who's filling in, who's covering each other. So if they can get it down, it's going to be crazy. But obviously there's a lot of potential ways to attack that type of lineup as well. So
yeah, sure. And like you said, there's a lot of new guys. Communication is going to be an issue initially, isn't it? And given the wealth of experience that they have brought in, it's something you expect will get fixed sooner rather than later, really.
Can JaVale McGee carry over these preseason numbers into the regular season? Because he's putting up some numbers that if I got from Mitchell Robinson at the end of a draft, I'd be really happy with. Close to double doubles, lots of blocks.
It's possible because I mean, all indications are, the Lakers were basically tied for first, and it was like the top 3 teams were, the same in terms of offensive pace. So, they're going to be a fast-paced team, and just so far in this preseason, like they may be even faster. Like they're just pushing everything. So, I just don't see McGee getting that many minutes. And Craig, the other day on the pod, you were saying like his asthmatic condition. All indications are that's not a detriment to his playing time. So, like if they wanted to play him, like he's physically able to. But I just don't see him getting, over 20 minutes. He's probably going to
Does
get
he
less than
need
20
that many
minutes.
though to be a fantasy with?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Just because the increase in pace, so there might be a lot of opportunities where he will be able to, produce. So um, yeah,
But
late in the draft.
do you feel there's also going to be because of the type of player that he is, and given the way that the NBA's gone, there's
Well,
going to be certain games where he's really going to be limited to single digit minutes, just because there'll
absolutely,
be a lot of rotations that the opponents will play that you just cannot put him out there against. That's my biggest fear,
absolutely.
is he's completely a matchups play, as opposed to a guy that's going to go out there and get 20 minutes a night and contribute in those 20 minutes.
No, I agree, and especially with the way that this roster is constructed, there's a lot of versatility. There's like Luke Walton is going to have a bevy of options, so it's going to be very interesting. And because of that versatility, it's going to be hard to count on consistent minutes for a player like McGee. Yeah, like you said, matchup dependent, things of that nature.
Yeah, he's really just a block specialist if you're light on blocks. If you if that's something you sort of ignored during the draft, he's somebody you might want to take with that last pick just to throw in to help you in the blocks category. So, I mean, any final thoughts here on the preseason primer? I know Kevin Knox put up a double-double. Markieff Morris got tossed for fighting with Mitchell Robinson,
I can't
who looks
believe
pretty good.
I can't believe we've gone an hour and I haven't been able to say the one thing that I wanted to say from before we even got onto the pod. I love Luka Doncic, and
Oh, yeah, that's someone
you
we need
know,
to talk about for a second, just so I can
it's
play some video of this kid.
will you marry me? I mean, basically, like, like I don't tweet much, but I did, tweet out something where watching that game, like I knew he was, like I knew his, dimensions on paper, but actually seeing him on the court with my own eyes, like man, he looked a lot bigger than what I expected, and from the highlights from when he was over in Craig's neck of the woods, and like it makes sense now why Carlisle was like, yeah, we're gonna play this guy power forward because like he's big, he's a big boy, and
Yeah, he's got
like
long
yeah,
arms.
yeah, he's long arms, he's
Those
big, so
handles, when he did that behind the back move, like,
yeah, like he's gonna abuse any big man that tries to guard him,
and the
then
fadeaway, the little fadeaway he has.
yeah, he's got it all. And little guards, he's just gonna punish them down low. And like that team is gonna be really, really exciting because you got DSJ
Are we
who looks
concerned about DeAndre Jordan's? He didn't travel
no,
to China. Do we know what's going on with
no.
him?
I think he's fine. It's just they have to save those Luka oops for the regular season. No need to, you know.
He dominates too much over in China with his
Yeah, I mean,
size.
yeah, keep all the bullets in the chamber, right? There's no need to. But yeah, I mean, that's yeah, I love Luka Doncic. I'm like pretty much all in on him, and it's gonna be fun watching that Dallas team play.
Yeah, Craig, what do you anyone on Dallas that jumps out at you? Who was the dude who had a decent game a couple days ago that I was looking at?
Well, I picked Dallas for the surprise team in the West. I think that.
I did too. I think we were the only two. I think we were the two guys.
How many wins did they get? 20 something, was it? 26 or something like that. I think they've really put themselves in a position where they could improve by 15, 16 games in one season, just because Luka Doncic's ability to create on the perimeter. DeAndre Jordan is the kind of guy they've been really after and screaming out for. In fact, they almost had Jordan, didn't they, a couple of years ago? They've still got a whole plethora of veterans there.
Max Kleber. Matt, what do you think about this guy?
Moments.
Yeah,
he's a rotational player, isn't he? He showed last year there was moments of games of fancy significance and games of hiding. I think you're going to get a lot of that from a lot of Dallas guys. But like Son said, the real excitement comes with DSJ, some thought it was a disappointing rookie season last year. My sort of answer to that is he was a one-and-done freshman, out of NC State, highly explosive player that wasn't that far removed from serious knee injury. I think, very, very exciting player. And Dallas have almost gone from one of the most boring teams to watch now, I think, to one of the more exciting teams to watch. And just a fresh new look, I think, is certainly got me excited. But I like the personnel that they brought in. So, I can see that. I'm a big fan of Luka as well. Been my number one rookie for, since forever. That doesn't change now.
Totally. I actually have a team with Doncic and Dennis Smith Jr. on it, and I'm super excited about that team. And any team where I got Doncic, I'm actually feeling really good about. So I totally agree. This kid, he looks like something special for sure. And it's really amazing. I mean, I know it's preseason, but it seems like a lot of these rookies are for real. Like, are actually gonna to have some fantasy value. DeAndre Ayton, we didn't even bring him up in his game. I mean, I don't know if he's going to have a David Robinson type season, but I think, he definitely could match the Karl Anthony Towns rookie year you had put up, son. Did you guys get a chance to see Ayton?
Let's put it into perspective one game. As impressive as it was, and the chemistry with Josh Jackson was great,
yeah.
But it was against a very young and a very up-tempo Kings offense. So I think you've kind of, yes, it's exciting. Yes, it's great to see him do that. But let's also temper expectations a little bit before, thinking this guy's going to put up first, second round numbers just yet.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't think first, second round, but I think he definitely, with a couple weeks left till the season, his ADP is going to be going up, and I think anyone who has drafts left is going to have to reach to get him probably.
But do you not feel with, especially with Luka Doncic and DeAndre Ayton, you look at their ADP on most sites, and it seems to be anywhere from 60 to about 75. And I just feel with both of those guys that the floor in their game and the opportunity, that almost feels like a floor value. Both of those guys in particular, given the opportunity, I just feel just coming at huge values in drafts. The upside is much, much higher than that. And their ADP, for me anyway, I just kind of feel their ADP is their kind of floor value.
I think most drafts, most drafts you got to take them. If you want them, you got to go fourth in the fifth round. That's where you have to take them.
If you look at the ADP on ESPN, Yahoo, and all of that, most of that's in the 60s.
So that's in knowledgeable drafts, fourth or fifth round. So do you think there's a lot more just the not so knowledgeable people just?
Oh, possibly. I'm sure that's I mean, I don't really do many redraft leagues. I mean, the leagues that I'm in are leagues that, long standing, been going for a long time. So I don't really, outside of sort of the Raspberry Listener League and the Writer Leagues, I don't really get that opportunity to draft fresh. But just sort of analysing the ADP numbers, I just found it quite astounding. If you can get Luka Doncic or Ayton in the sixth round, for example, for me, I just think, you look at the game, you look at, what you expect to get them projected number-wise, and I just see that as an absolute floor value.
Yeah, I agree.
And Sun had them ranked nicely in his rankings, and I think he took a little bit of stuff for having rookies ranked so well, but all the more reason if you got drafts coming up, check out Sun's rankings. The preseason has just solidified pretty much all of those ranks, just in my opinion, just looking at it. So congratulations, Sun. Definitely put together a really nice list that I've utilized in my drafts, and I think our listeners would be wise to check out those rankings. If they're using our draft tool, I think your rankings are in there too. Craig's rankings as well. Especially, rookie rankings, if you're in a dynasty league, that's so hard to track all that stuff, and Craig does such a great job of tracking all that, knowing sort of which guys are the real deal, which guys are mirages. So, just excited to be a part of the team here, and just the season's about to kick off. So, any final words, with our preseason here? I think next week we'll probably just maybe go over some predictions that we put together for the season, try to get Viz back on here with us. But any quick parting words that people should keep an eye on this next week?
Presidential campaign for Malik Monk. So just keep an eye out for that.
And if anyone knows Malik Monk or his agent or anything like that, tell him to get a hold of us. If we could just get him on the phone for 10 minutes, it would make Craig's year. Son, any parting words?
Well, be like water.
Be like water. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Remember, if you like our videos, subscribe, like them, comment. It all helps us grow. We really appreciate it. Coming up on 100 subscribers, we'd love to blow past that mark as we come into the season. Weekly content, almost daily content, hopefully at some point. Razzball.com. Thank you, guys. Good night.